22 years I've worked these grounds. 22 winters, 22 springs. In that time I have buried teachers and thieves, infants and centenarians, men whose obituaries ran 3 columns, and women whose only mourner was the chaplain we kept on retainer for exactly those occasions. You develop a rhythm with the dead. Not a fondness exactly, but something adjacent to it, a professional intimacy, the way a surgeon must eventually make peace with the body as object. You stop seeing names, you see plots, dimensions, soil type, drainage grade. You stop thinking about what the person was. You think about what the ground needs. It's a necessary insulation. Without it, this job would hollow you out in a season, but some of them get through anyway, some of them find the gaps. It was a Tuesday in November, the 3rd, 4 years ago now. The frost had come early that year, deep, mean frost that hardens the top 2 inches of clay into something close to ceramic. I'd been out since 2:30 in the afternoon, finishing the prep work on a plot in Section D for a Mr. Harold Ellsworth, 84 years old, retired civil engineer, died of cardiac arrest in his armchair on a Sunday morning with a cup of tea gone cold on the side table beside him. His daughter had made the arrangements. She'd been composed in the way that people are composed when they've had time to prepare, when the end had been expected and the paperwork was already half done. I was alone by 4 o'clock. My assistant had left at 3 with a bad back he'd been nursing all week, and I'd told him to go. The light was already thinning, that flat, gray November light that doesn't so much fade as curdle. I was tamping the edges of the plot, checking the drainage line along the eastern border of Section D, when I became aware of being watched. Not an uncomfortable feeling at first. Visitors occasionally linger past closing, parents with nowhere else to go, widowers who fall asleep on the bench near the old oak and have to be gently roused. I looked up expecting to find someone like that. Instead, I found a girl. She was standing at the iron fence along the eastern perimeter, approximately 40 meters from where I was working, 9, maybe 10 years old. She was wearing a yellow coat, the kind of bright, deliberate yellow that children's coats are made in so they can be spotted in crowds and car parks and school corridors. Big red buttons down the front, 4 of them, the bottom one slightly askew as though it had been replaced in a hurry. Her hair was dark and pulled back. She was perfectly still. I raised a hand. She didn't respond. Not a wave, not a nod, nothing. Just watching me with an expression I couldn't read at that distance. Not frightened, not curious. Patient, almost. Like someone waiting for a bus they know is coming. I went back to my work. There was nothing alarming about a child at the fence. Children wander. They cut through on their way home from school. The east fence bordered a residential street, and there were gaps in the hedgerow that the neighbors' kids had been using for years as a shortcut, despite the signs. I finished the drainage check, loaded the barrow, and began walking toward the equipment shed on the south side. I passed within 20 meters of where she'd been standing. The fence was empty. I stopped and looked both directions along the perimeter. Nothing. The hedgerow was still. The street beyond it was quiet, no footsteps, no gate swinging, no yellow coat moving away down the pavement. I stood there for a moment longer than I needed to, then told myself I was being foolish and went to put the tools away. I did a full perimeter check before locking up, as I always do. East fence, west fence, north gate, south service entrance. No one. I drove home. I made dinner. I didn't think about the girl in the yellow coat, not really, not consciously. But I slept badly that night, which was unusual for me. This job tends to produce deep sleepers. The weeks passed. November became December. I buried Harold Ellsworth without incident. His daughter came with her husband and 2 adult children, all of them dry-eyed in that particular way of people who have done their crying in private. It was a Thursday. The ground was hard. 3 weeks into December, on a morning of pale, reluctant sun, a woman came into the office, mid-40s. She was wearing a gray coat, and her eyes were the eyes of someone who had not slept properly in some time. Not just recently, but for a sustained period, weeks or months, the kind of sleeplessness that rewrites the face. She sat down across from me and folded her hands on the desk and said she needed to arrange a burial. Her daughter, 9 years old, her name was Iris. She had been struck by a car on the evening of November 3rd, crossing a residential street 3 miles east of the cemetery. She had been taken to hospital and had died there in the small hours of November 4th without regaining consciousness. The driver had stopped. It had been an accident in the most complete sense of the word. A wet road, a child stepping out from between parked cars, a moment so ordinary in its horror that no one could be blamed, and so everyone was. The mother, her name was Patricia, wanted the burial here because she lived close by. She wanted a plot in the east section, near the iron fence, where she said Iris used to walk on her way home from school. She used to peer through the fence at the old stones, Patricia told me. She wasn't afraid of cemeteries. She thought they were interesting. She used to ask questions about who the people were. I processed the paperwork. I kept my voice level and my hands still. The plot I assigned her was in Section D, eastern border, approximately 40 meters from where I had been working on the evening of November 3rd. This was not something I chose deliberately. It was simply the most appropriate available plot for a child's burial, sheltered, maintained near the perimeter path her mother could walk. We interred Iris on a Tuesday in late December, one of those colorless winter days where the sky and the ground seemed to be the same material. Patricia came with her brother and her own mother and a small group of Iris's classmates, fidgeting in their good clothes, not yet old enough to know what stillness a funeral required. The casket was white, and Iris was buried in her yellow coat. I saw it when they opened the casket briefly at the chapel service beforehand. At Patricia's request, she'd wanted people to see her daughter as she was, not arranged into some unfamiliar. The coat was buttoned, 4 red buttons, the bottom one slightly askew. I have thought about this many times since. I have turned it over and tested it from different angles, the way you do with something that won't resolve into sense. She died in hospital in the early hours of November 4th. She was crossing a street 3 miles away at the time of the accident. There is no version of that evening in which Iris could have been standing at the east fence of my cemetery at 4 o'clock in the afternoon watching me work. I've never told Patricia. What would I give her? Not comfort, not answers, just one more thing to carry, on top of everything else she already carries. I walk past the plot most mornings. I don't linger, but I look. There are usually flowers. Patricia comes every few days without fail. Some days there are drawings, laminated against the weather, that I assume were made by her classmates. Once there was a small stuffed rabbit that I moved to shelter under the lee of the stone so the rain wouldn't ruin it. I don't know what Iris was doing at that fence. I don't know if she was there at all in any meaningful sense. What I know is what I saw and what the coat looked like, and that the bottom button was on the left side, slightly higher than it should have been, the thread a different shade of red from the others. Some things you carry alone. That's not a burden. It's just the shape of the job. Hello, and thank you for being here. We want you to know that Bone Chilling Nightmare is completely free from ads. No interruptions, no distractions, just pure immersive storytelling. But creating these experiences comes at a cost. Every video is built from hours of research, writing, and production, all done with care to bring you stories that truly stay with you. Without ad revenue, the channel depends entirely on the support of viewers like you. If our stories have ever captured your imagination or given you that unforgettable chill, we invite you to support us. Whether it's $3 or $500, your contribution directly helps us continue creating and growing this community. Don't just watch from the shadows. Be part of what keeps Bone Chilling Nightmare alive. Thank you so much for checking out the link in the video description below to support and keep this creepy community thriving. Thank you again for your support. Every cemetery has its regulars, the ones you come to recognize not by name but by habit. The man who comes every Sunday at 10 and stays for exactly 20 minutes. The woman who brings a folding stool and a flask and treats the visit like a Sunday afternoon in a park, unhurried, conversational, as if the dead have nothing but time. You learn not to intrude on these rituals. They are the most private thing a person can do in public. Section G, row 11. Marcus Jerome Adeyemi, born April 7, 1991, died September 14, 2017, 26 years old. Motorcycle accident on a wet road outside the city, a Sunday evening in early autumn, the kind of evening that probably felt like ordinary time right up until it didn't. He was buried here because his mother Agnes lived 10 minutes away and had chosen the plot herself, walking the rows of Section G for nearly an hour before settling on this one. I was the one who walked with her. She was a large, quiet woman with careful eyes, and she chose the plot because of the oak tree 12 meters to the north. She said Marcus had liked trees. She said it without needing to explain further. Agnes came every Sunday after the burial. Without exception, without variation. White carnations, always a bunch of 5 or 6, always fresh. She'd stand for 15 or 20 minutes, not kneeling, not sitting, just standing close to the stone with her hands folded and her eyes open, which I always found more striking than prayer. She wasn't asking for anything, she was just being present, witnessing. Then, about 22 months after the burial, sometime in the summer of 2019, she stopped. I noticed her absence the way you notice a sound that has stopped, not immediately, but in retrospect. One Sunday I realized I hadn't seen her in 3 or 4 weeks, then 6 weeks, then 2 months. I asked the administrator to check whether there'd been any correspondence from the family, any change of address on file. Nothing. People move. People find that the ritual no longer helps or helps differently, and so they change it. I assumed she'd found another way to carry what she was carrying and let the thought go. But the flowers kept coming. White carnations. Every Monday morning when I did my rounds, they were there on the stone. Fresh, not the fresh of something placed a few hours ago, but the fresh of something placed within the day. Dew still sometimes on the petals in the early mornings, which meant they'd been placed before dawn or very close to it. No note, no other marker, just the flowers, precisely 5, fanned in the way that suggested they'd been arranged, rather than simply set down. I watched for weeks. I changed my Sunday routine, arriving earlier, varying my route through Section G. I asked the weekend groundsman, a young lad named Cormac, to keep an eye on row 11 during his morning rounds. He reported nothing. The flowers continued to appear. They were always gone, wilted, removed, by the following Saturday, and replaced again by Monday. Whoever was leaving them was also taking the old ones away, which struck me as the detail of someone who had thought carefully about what they were doing. I began arriving at dawn on Mondays. For 3 Mondays, nothing. The flowers already there when I unlocked the maintenance gate at 6:30. On the 4th Monday, I came in through the pedestrian entrance on the north side at 5:45, before first light, and walked through the dark to Section G with my torch off, moving by memory, which after 20 years of this job is reliable enough. I found the plot by the shape of the oak's canopy against the sky, and I stopped, because there was someone there, a woman. She was crouching at the stone, not kneeling, crouching in that uncomfortable, deliberate posture of someone who doesn't want to get their clothes dirty, but needs to be low. She was placing the flowers one by one, slowly, in a particular arrangement. I stood at a distance and watched, feeling strongly that I was witnessing something I had not been meant to see and should not interrupt. She stayed perhaps 10 minutes. She touched the top of the headstone briefly with the flat of her palm, the way you might touch someone's forehead when they are sleeping. Then she stood, tucked something behind the stone, and walked away in the direction of the north entrance without looking back. She was perhaps 30 years old, slim, dark-haired, moving with the particular quietness of someone practiced in not being noticed. I gave her 5 minutes. Then I went to the stone. Behind it, in the narrow gap between the base of the headstone and the earth, there was a small plastic sleeve of the type used to protect documents from the weather, a Ziploc bag, the seal beginning to yellow with age. Inside was a piece of folded paper, handwritten in small, careful letters, water-warped but entirely legible. I never stopped. I just couldn't let you see me anymore. You look too much like him now, and I am not strong enough. I will come until I can't. I will bring white ones because you said red ones were for people who were trying too hard. I don't remember everything you said, but I remember that. I remember most things. I'm trying to forget the right ones and keep the rest. I'm not doing very well at it, but I am here. I am always here. It was signed at the bottom, Delia. I cross-referenced the name against our records. Delia does not appear in Marcus's file, not as family, not as a designated next of kin, not as any listed contact. I found no Delia in the emergency contact section, no Delia in the correspondence around the burial arrangements. Agnes had managed everything alone, which had struck me at the time as the decision of a woman who needed to be useful and found comfort in paperwork. I don't know who Delia is, a girlfriend never introduced. A woman Marcus had loved in the private way that young people love when they are not yet sure it will last, keeping it close to themselves in case it doesn't. Maybe someone Agnes didn't know existed. Maybe someone Agnes knew about and had her own feelings toward. I will never know, because it's not mine to investigate. What I know is that Delia has been coming for more than 5 years now. I have seen her twice more since that Monday dawn. She does not come at the same time, never precisely, as though she varies her visits intentionally. She always crouches, never kneels. She always brings white carnations, always 5. She always takes the old ones away. The note is still there. I put it back exactly as I found it. I have not read it again since that morning, though I could recite it from memory, if pressed. Some things, once you've received them, you carry whether you want to or not. I think about Delia sometimes, what her Sundays are like, what she does between visits, whether she has a family now or whether she is still in the orbit of this stone, circling it like a moon around something that no longer generates heat. I wonder whether Marcus knew how fully he was loved. I suspect he had some idea. People usually do, even when they don't say so. Agnes still doesn't come. I hope she found her peace somewhere else. I think she did. She had the look of a woman who knew how to endure. But I also hope that somewhere, someone is leaving flowers for her. White ones. 5. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I truly appreciate your time and presence. And thank you for your support and contributions. It means more than you know and helps keep Bone-Chilling Nightmare alive and growing. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next story.